Hi, guys. This week on the podcast, we have a good friend of mine who will be joining us who has been ingrained in the fabric of Canadian music industry. Uh, you'll soon find out that he has been a DJ, he has been a music reviewer, he's worked for Spotify, he's worked for SoCan, he's worked for Universal Music. He is Guillaume Moffet, and let's get into it. Bonjour, hello, hi. I'm Ranny from the Vinyljunkie podcast, and this week we have someone who is bilingual, a twin, and worked at Spotify Canada and Universal Canada. Welcome, Guillaume Moffet. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Not too bad. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Um, Obviously, we've known each other for quite a while. We dance around on Instagram back and forth and been to a few shows together. So it's been pretty exciting. Um, let's get into, you know, a bit of your backstory. You grew up in Quebec, Quebec City, I believe.
Yes, yes. So I grew up in Quebec City, did some studies at Laval, and then left for Ottawa. Studied 2 years at this college for radio broadcasting, which led me to be a radio host in Gatineau in Ottawa for a few years. And like looking back, it's funny because like you realize that you were very much like your own ADHD person. But like imagine I don't know, 23, 24, 25 and hosting these shows on radio and like full on like easily distracted when I'm on the mic and it wasn't working and I was not my best communicator. Um, and
When you're that young, it's like you don't fully know yourself yet, right?
no. And to me, like, growing up with top 40 radio, and I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I can accomplish as a music fan. Um, and someone gave me my first opportunity to start writing in a publication so quickly. Like, I was the go-to person to interview anyone that would stop by, like Ottawa and Gatineau. Um, and so quickly, I got to interview like some of my like the biggest names back then. So like I did like Bjork and Courtney Love and Nora Jones
Wow.
and um, who else? Um Emily Haynes from Metric, um, uh, Bon Iver, and one thing leads to another. And that publication was bilingual, so like one side was Voir, and the other side was Ottawa Express. And in 2010, 2009, they invited me to become the editor in chief of these both publications in Ottawa. So for a few years, I was holding the fort as print media was dying.
Yeah.
So I did that for a few years until we folded Ottawa Express in 2012. And I was like, okay, what do I do? Do I stay? Am I holding, onto like musical journalism in Canada?
Hmm.
Um, what do I do? So there was this position open at TFO for a brand new show about the music and about indie music. It was like the hipster years, like it was the
Explain to people what TFO is.
um, Franco-Ontarian television. So it's the French equivalent of TVO. Um, and they were working on this brand new franchise called BRBR Bar Bar, and it was essentially like the CBC sessions before the CBC sessions. So like we would film um, emerging artists in their context, in their like rehearsal spaces, um, with like very high production values. And we did that. Like we filmed over 2 years, like close to 400 sessions,
Wow.
which was a lot. It was a lot, and it was an amazing experience. And Stephen Harper cut in funding that year. Like a lot of people at CBC lost their jobs, and we lost our funding for that. So the show was canceled, or essentially canceled. I was like, okay, what do I do? Like all the doors, all signs pointed towards change, and someone from SOCAN invited me. I just like took the phone, being like, "Hey, Guillaume, like I think you would be really good at this. Like we're trying to build a new team at SOCAN. SOCAN is the Canada's performing rights organization. So like SOCAN is in charge of essentially like paying the songwriter and the publisher when the music is performed, whether it's on the radio, on DSPs, so like Spotify and Apple Music, or during concerts. And it's the leading organization when it comes to performing rights in Canada.
Hmm.
So they were starting an A&R team, and they asked me if I wanted to join. And I picked up my things from Toronto, moved to Montreal, started this team, and we worked closely with songwriters and publishers to build um, a few annual songwriting camps. Um, so like the first few years, we were working with like baby Charlotte Cardin, baby Ralph, baby. It was really, really, really cool. And then we kind of like fostered the talent through these songwriting camps, which led me to um, being really close friends with our friends at Spotify Canada, who ended up like offering me a job as senior editor, which meant that I was in charge of revitalizing the French content on Spotify, but also I was in charge of doing folk, indie, country, and dance playlists in Canada.
Wow.
We did that for like 2.5 years until Universal asked me to join their ranks um, as an A&R in charge of, on one side, their French music content, and on the other side, like a bit of pop, a bit of everything when it comes to pop. And I did that up until a few weeks ago.
That's amazing. I knew of the earlier stuff, of the most recent stuff, and then when I was kind of poking around, I did see some of the other stuff, and it's interesting how everything just kind of rolled in, like one rolled into the other, um, and it just kind of shows the power of networking and making connections, and you know being that guy that everyone wants to work with.
Um, yeah, well, I mean, like, I have been lucky. I think it's being there at the right time, at the right place.
Hmm.
It's also, oh, we'll have to cut this. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Um,
Right time and right place.
okay. Um, yeah, well, I feel like uh, I have been lucky in my career so far. I've held like really amazing positions. but I feel like, I don't know, we have to stay humble because like us music executives, like um, we're nothing without the creators. So like uh, I I don't know, like I'm just a music fan who ended up like giving giving my all to like a bunch of amazing artists. So
Hmm.
um, yeah, yeah, I have been lucky so far.
Well, let's talk about that. How did you become a music fan? Um, little you in Quebec City. Uh, what was the scene like? Where was there a lot of music being played at home? Like,
Oh my
where
god,
did?
yes, yes. Um, I think like early on, we were. I grew up with an older brother. I have a twin brother. If you guys like want to follow another vinyl junkie,
Yep.
um, Sebastien Moffet. He's
We'll
based in
put him in the
Montreal.
description below too.
Yes. And my younger sister, we grew up with much music and Music Plus and MTV. It was a golden era of um,
Indeed.
indie and pop.
Hmm.
And growing up with like both my parents were really, really into music. My mom, I remember like really, really young, like she loved Hall and Oates and Rick Astley, and she loved Vogue by Madonna, which was like, like I'm 8, and I was like, oh wow, this is like so gay, but also like such a pop. Um, and most of our like my best childhood memories revolved around music. Um, I remember, like I'm 5 or 6, and my dad is in front of the piano, and he's trying to explain, in French, the accent aigu and accent grave on the piano, being like, "This is aigu and this is grave," and this was like, um, I don't know, like my parents were not musically
Hmm.
inclined, like they're not musicians at all, but they are fans of music.
Yep.
um, you know, in the car we would listen to music all the time. Um, I have vivid memories of like us going to our cottage at the summer cottage and us listening to the Eagles, or my dad was a lot like into like Cat Stevens and um, Fleetwood Mac, and so yeah, like
Sounds
it's
like our dads would get along well together, musically.
yeah, our generation dads,
Yeah.
absolutely for sure. Um, the classics. So yeah, like, and growing up with radio, I remember like me and my brother waking up really early on Saturday mornings and listening to radio, and kind of like I remember back then, like the countdown was printed in the newspaper on every morning or every Saturday morning, and we would
Mm.
be just like circling the songs we want, and so that like we would have our tape for the week. Um, and this was like we were 8, and it was like instinct. We were like, we want music, we want more music, we want to be exposed to more.
Yep.
Um, so we grew up like with top 40 music, and back then it was like rock, pop, dance. Everything was playing. It was being played on top 40 radio. So it
And
kind
you
of
were
like,
bootlegging it all.
oh yeah, or like the initial
Yep.
um, pirates,
When
So
did
yeah,
when did you buy your first piece of music?
okay, I have. Yes, I remember like really really early getting asking my parents for um, Quebecois pop, but I bet like we were 8, and by we I mean like me and my twin brother,
Yep.
um, and we there was a sale at Discogs or Discus. It was like a chain in Quebec, and they were selling cassettes for $4.99, and like $5, like at my, like when we were like 8, it was a lot.
Yep.
And um, I don't know why, but I thought, I don't know, like I counted my pennies, and like um, and to me, like every 60 penny accounted for a
$1,
dollar,
like
because
an
like I
hour,
thought
like yeah.
it was worth it. Yeah. And so like, and then like I was like, oh, we have enough for $5. It's gonna be great. Like, let's go Saturday morning and ask mom to drive us to the record store. And there were like 4 albums on sale. It was Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation. It was Paula Abdul's Forever Your Girl. Brothers, like that twin
Oh,
brother duo from
bros.
Bros, and
Yep.
CC Music Factory. Okay. And I loved Paula Abdul. And I was like, so like, watching the music videos and how like the choreos were like so well executed. And it was like great pop, and it was all over radio, all over Much Music.
Hmm.
I was like, okay, we need this. And we show up, it's Saturday morning, and they don't have Paula Abdul. And they
Oh
only have
no.
like the record, or like, and I was like, oh no, what are we going to do? We were like cassette players, like in our
Yeah.
room, like we were like that generation. And then like, we had to make a quick decision as to like, okay, well, we want to leave with something. Like, there's no way we would leave the record store
Empty-handed.
without anything.
Yep.
So the plan B was Janet, and I'm like, so happy that we ended up like getting this like masterpiece of pop making, of pop. It was, like I was discovering something like so much more intricate and beautifully done than, you know, Forever Your Girl by Paul Abdul, which was like fine. It did like,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
as an album, it doesn't hold up like next to
yeah.
Rhythm
No
Nation.
shade, but yeah.
No shame.
Alti.
And I remember like we went home and we put the cassette in the cassette tape player, and my mom was like, every single song sounds the same, blah blah blah. But she was like kind of a bit like dismissive, and it's a long album. It's like more than 60 minutes. I'm like quite certain. And but like you go through a journey, and I was like so enthralled. Like I was so excited, and there's like those beautiful sad ballads, and you have like Black Cat in the middle of the like that's just like a slap in the face, and um, so yeah, so Rhythm Nation was the first piece of music that I bought with my own money, and also at the record store just to finish my 60 cents for $1 story. I ended up like having maybe like not even $4 in my hands, and my mom was like, Guillaume, like, um, you don't have enough money. And I was like, oh no, I'm so sorry, mom. And she fronted the rest, whatever. So thanks, mom, for helping us getting our first cassette, the first album. Yeah, Rhythm Nation. And to this day, it's like a piece of nostalgia, but also it still holds up. It's an amazing record.
Yep. It's a fantastic record.
Yeah.
Were you guys the kind of brothers that kind of learn the choreography and would be dancing in your bedroom and no.
No, no. Um, I being francophones and growing up in Quebec, like we would. I remember like maybe later on the Janet Janet album, like the self-titled, um, we would try to translate the songs, like the meanings of the songs, um, and I remember that one song on Janet that's called "Throb." It's like overtly sexual,
Yep.
and I'm like, I don't know, 9 or 10, and I'm trying to like decipher why she in the background, and and I'm like, my mom is like not happy. Um, but no choreos really like, um, yeah.
That's amazing. So you were you were a big like Janet stan from like an early age.
Yeah, yeah, she was my girl. Um, but also like it's the quality of the output. You know, it was the dancing, the variety, the production value.
She
Um,
definitely had like a golden age there of like 3 or 4 albums that were just like fantastic.
yeah, 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 yeah. And it was like foreign enough in my very white background, very like sheltered Quebecois Catholic background, that like it felt exciting when she was pushing boundaries, um, and it was exciting and uh, it made me kind of like uncomfortable because I was a kid. I was still a kid, and I wouldn't really understand any of the like sexual songs,
Yeah, yeah.
um, or even just like the political context behind Rhythm Nation. Like I had no idea,
Hmm.
and like looking back, like these things felt like so much richer than on the flip side, "Forever Your Girl" by Paula. You know,
Yeah, for sure.
um, so yeah,
Or Bros.
yes, or Bros. You know,
I'm surprised you didn't get Bros. It's like this twin band, and you guys are twins. It's kind
yeah,
of like it
but
sounds like
the
it
music
should have been
wasn't
totally
holding
your
up.
thing.
Like, yeah, the music wasn't that good. Like they had one song. You know, like even back then, I had, I was, we were holding ourselves to like high standards. You know, when it comes to kind of like consumption and what we would put like our money towards. You know,
At that age, it's like, were you guys kind of the other kids? Were they also kind of listening to the same stuff, or I
no,
feel like they weren't. Like you guys were ahead of the curve.
we and I don't know. Like, is it a question of taste or is it just like? And I remember like I I think I bought like Janet no or Jagged Little Pill by Alanis like the week it came out,
Hmm.
and not when Ironic became a massive hit um, or even like Tragic Kingdom by No Doubt. I bought it the summer it came out, not like 18 months later when Don't Speak was a massive success at radio.
Yeah.
So to me, like that album, when everyone wanted a piece of No Doubt, I was like, well, I have been listening to it for 18 months now. I know it by heart, and I knew the second I heard "Don't Speak" that it would be a massive, massive, massive song. So I don't know. It's the love of a well constructed um, pop song. It's I don't know. Yeah, the love of music, and like that made us kind of like quickly.
You kind of got an ear for what
Yeah,
was
yeah,
good.
but also like like that made us like that made me. Um, I was a kid in school who would like host a radio show, like internal radio at like in high school, and like instead of playing, like the odd like Blink-182, I would be like, "Here's a new song by Portishead," or like Bjork, and
Wow.
I would be like not giving a flying fuck about like it was the music I loved,
Hmm.
and um, that made me that people were like, "Oh my god, you're weird," but also I was like unapologetic about that. Um, I
And
feel
I'm
like
sure when they came around to it after like a year later or whatever, it's like,
absolutely,
oh
yeah,
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 that.
yeah. Um, so that I was so excited about new music. It's always been that, like the discovery of new music, like where the one of my favorite artists would take me on, um, what kind of like evolution the artist would um, give. I don't know. It was like yeah, the whole thing was the excitement that new music would give me, like that dopamine hit every
Hmm.
time I would show up at HMV on a Tuesday morning. because like I would skip school to get like what's this song in
That's
Morning Glory.
right. Tuesdays used to be the
Yeah,
days that all the
yeah,
new releases. I
yeah.
completely forgot about that until you just said that. I was like, Tuesdays. It's like, oh yeah, Tuesdays. That's
Or
that.
when I would ask my mom or my dad every now and then, like on this lunch break, um, we would like pool our money to get like one or two albums at the same time, like me and my brother. And he would go on his lunch break at Future Shop and get, you know, two new albums for us. And it was like the excitement of discovering something new, because like Much Music told us so, or we would love one specific song on the radio and would just like buy into like discovering an album. And that's why, you know, the art of making albums um, is so important to me.
Well, you kind of like manifested a career where you've placed yourself in the forefront of being able to consume new music as soon as possible. Like here you are at the radio station, here you are at Spotify, here you are at Universal, where you're in a position where you're one of the first people in the country to hear some of these songs.
Yeah, I remember when I was a music journalist, I got a promo CD from Sony. Um, I think it's like my friend Sylvain Moffet at Sony who gave me a very early promo CD of Bleeding Love by Leona Lewis.
Oh
And I
wow.
was like, before it came out, before it was number one, even in the UK, and before it kind of like did something in North America. And
Hmm.
I was like, oh my fucking God. Like, you know, power ballads are back after like not a, you
Hmm.
know, we hadn't had a massive power ballad in forever. Um, and yeah, like the last like 20 years of me as a music lover, it's always been fueled by either helping new music to be out or um, showcase new music. It's all about like curation or um, I was telling an artist friend this morning, like it's just like me being a music lover, being a friend, helping friends. You know?
Hmm. That's beautiful. It's um that's kind of how I feel about like even creating this podcast. It's like sure we're not I'm not it's not necessarily about the artist, but it is in a roundabout way, and it's kind of sharing that joy we have as fans, and kind of like sharing those stories that um we all have locked away that bring us so many good memories, right?
You know, like walking to like into a record store these days, like you end up like seeing familiar faces. You end up like having fulfilling conversations. Not to single one out, but like walking into like pop music, this record store in Toronto, it's like coming home. You know, really like, and you know for a fact that you will have a great conversation. You will have people like suggesting you something, and
Hmm.
I like as a student, I was working at Archambault, the record store in Quebec City, and it was probably like the best job I've ever had, even though it was not paying anything or hardly anything. And it was just like me as a music lover suggesting things to other people that were like inclined to, you know, like what I like.
Yeah.
And I like it started everything. I was 19 and I would spend my Saturday at the record store just being like, hey, listen to this. Like, okay, well, I remember this like woman who she came to me and she was like, okay, well, for 10 years, I haven't listened to anything because I had kids and, you know, and now I'm ready to kind of like start listening to adult music again.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, cool. What is your vibe? Tell me like what you like. And she was like, back then I was like, I like so and so and so and so. And I was like, okay, cool. And it was like me making connections with like
Hmm.
the what she loved in the past and what's current. And I remember back then it was like all the rage for Damien Rice's O album. and we like there was all these like trip hop chill out compilations, and Dido was was big back then, and I remember it was back then when the record store like would open the CDs and have them like listen to the clients before they would buy them, and she ended up leaving with 5 CDs back then, and
Wow.
uh, yeah, I think it started me like my excitement being able to kind of like share with people why I like this, why I don't like, or like my thoughts. It led me to amazing places, like to write reviews about albums and to like make playlists, and ultimately it just comes down to curation and giving my humble 2 cents on music in general.
Hmm. And you still do that kind of like every day, like in your
Well, here
Instagram
we
and
are.
Facebook posts,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
even in your
yeah.
posts, right? Like you're kind of sharing what you're listening to right now, and um, fostering that chosen family of that chosen musical family that we all have.
Yeah, every now and then, like I have someone reaching out, being like, "Hey, I discovered this album. I didn't know it," and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I did my job. It's not even a job. It's just like connecting people with good music.
But in doing like these episodes, these podcasts, it's kind of like listening to other people share their stories of how they discovered this album that I've never heard of. It's like, oh wow, I need to go find that now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like vinyl collecting and just like vinyl in general is um, it's such a pure. It's so pure, but it makes us overconsume, I guess. Like I see your
um,
collection in the back. I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
it's a
yeah.
little out of hand. Speaking of vinyl, so when did you first kind of make that shift? When did you first find your love of vinyl versus any other kind of physical media? Like, obviously, you started
Um,
with cassettes, and that's kind of what was popular at the time when you were
yeah,
growing up.
yeah. Um, Started with cassettes, and then Columbia House back then with the CDs. Like build my collection.
You,
Um,
Derek, Christy, all of you are like Columbia House, Columbia House, Columbia House.
it's generational.
Yeah, no,
Um,
me too. I
yeah.
did it as well, and you always kind of forget to bring back those cards, and stuff shows up. It's like, oh,
Oh my god! Like my mom was like we would fill a card, and my mom was like, "Oh my god, are we signed up for 2 years again?" And we'd be like, "Yes, let's do it." And it was like it ended up like being way too expensive for what it is, and but we had amazing albums, and um, so yeah, so cassette and CDs, and then at the end of I remember the first vinyl I was sent as a music journalist was from Maple, and it was Kathleen Edwards,
oh,
Voyageur.
nice.
And back then, I interviewed Kathleen for a dual feature, both in French and English, for Auto Express and Voir.
They
Um,
sent you a vinyl instead of like a CD.
I think they sent the listening, like the link, and
Oh, okay.
then I think I asked for vinyl. But I remember like Dana Shiskos, who was the PR attached to Maple back then, um, who ended up um, who I ended up working at Universal with, and we ended up becoming like best friends. But like that was like 12, 13 years ago.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think she sent me the vinyl at work, and I was like, okay, well, I need a turntable, blah blah blah. And my friends in Ottawa, for my 30th birthday, they got me a dual 506, with an amp and two speakers. And
Nice.
it was um, the day after I moved to Toronto. So I packed everything. I had like um, Kathleen. I had maybe like Bon Iver and Dan Mangin, and it was like very like 4 or 5 vinyl.
Hmm.
Um, oh, maybe like Florence and the Machine, but it was like a very small collection. And in Toronto, being a music journalist, still like people would send us stuff, and I just started buying a lot. um, and yeah, like one thing leads to another,
Oh yeah,
and
and when
here
you
I
live in downtown Toronto, the record shops are like literally just downstairs.
yeah, yes, I my first job in Toronto was at College Park, so College and Young, and the HMV back then was like a few blocks away.
Hmm.
And I remember like those like two vinyl for $25, and I was like, oh wow, this is so cheap, whatever. So like I would buy a bunch of stuff that I didn't need back then, but like it just started my collection. Yeah.
How big's your collection now? Would you say?
um, I have I have around like 2000,
Okay.
2000. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Is there anything in your collection, or is there anything that is still a grail that you haven't gotten that you really want?
Oh, so many of them. So many. Oh, it's a good question. Um, there's like some RSD exclusive that I missed out on. Um, um, oh wow. I think like most of my my wants are the albums that I like from my childhood that haven't been repressed, or um, I think like most of them have, like I've ended up being able to find. Um, so yeah, no, I feel like besides like maybe a handful that like they're either like way too expensive, or
Yep.
um, and then there's no way I'm gonna spend like $500 on one vinyl.
Oh,
Um,
it's actually crazy because I was on Marketplace the other day, and then all of a sudden, George Michael Faith showed up on as a listing, and it was like $40. I was like, "What? That's $40?" It wasn't like a new pressing or anything. It was just like, and I was like, "This guy must be mad." And then I looked up Discogs, and it's like, "Oh yeah, okay, it's $40."
yeah, yeah,
And there's some
um,
stuff that I've bought, like, you know, I feel like even in the last 5 years that are newer pressings, and you look up how much they are now, and I guess because the press runs are so small.
yep,
Um,
yeah. That, and also there's so much more volume into like um, there's so many, like I feel like the Taylor Swift effect is real when it comes to vinyl collection or collectors. People are like, oh, this is cool. Like, let me see if like my favorite album for 5 years ago that has been repressed like is available somewhere, and it just drives the prices up, really. Um,
well, I feel like that Taylor Swift effect or the Olivia Rodrigo effect at Record Store Day, like I was really happy to. I wasn't planning on doing Record Store Day, and I end up, spending time at Pop, shooting photos and video for Jarek, and it was an interesting experience because it's like there was definitely that younger crowd that was kind of that Taylor Swift, Olivia Rodrigo crowd that was trying to get their limited things. And then there's the older crowd that's been doing this for like 10 years and are
Yeah.
now kind of fed up because these kids are
Uh, you know what?
well,
Like, okay, okay. Like, I would say
I,
that, like,
sorry, I should reword that. Like now that the lines are now at like 5 p.m. than the previous day instead of like
six
maybe
thirty.
6:30 or 5 a.m.
Yeah.
like a couple of hours before the store opens. Um, I do want to ask you, what do you think of the fact that there was a statistic recently? I don't know what the percentage is, but that a lot of it was like a very large percentage of people who own records or who are collecting records these days don't even have a record player. What do you think of that statistic?
Um, I mean, like, if it's there to support the artist and to support creation, then like, I don't care. I like, I'm not, I'm not in the business of putting judgment towards like whether or not you like actually opened, or like played it on a like turntable. Like, if you put value towards this physical piece of art, um, and you put out like 40, 50, 60, $70 into collecting stuff that you care about, I'm like, well, cool. Like,
Yeah,
you know, I,
it's definitely
um,
become more of like I feel like a merch thing
yeah, yeah, for
than
sure.
a. It's like, oh, it's like I'm wearing a T-shirt that supports the artist versus um getting the physical media to consume the physical media, because obviously there are so many other places that we can consume the music anyway.
Yeah, I feel like for the younger generation, um, they will get the vinyl, and you know, like, we're still in like late stage capitalism. People are living in small apartments, and with roommates and everything, and not a lot of people can afford like the having the room to collect, or having kind of like a special room dedicated to putting like a turntable and everything. And I, if someone wants to kind of like, yeah, shell out $70 to get the Taylor Swift like exclusive vinyl, whatever, um, and just for it to be like nice on a wall, well then, like, cool, it's your prerogative. It truly is. And
Yep.
then like, we will listen on Spotify or Apple Music, and like, it'll do what it needs to be um, doing.
Um, what so before we started the call or the podcast, you pulled a couple of records to show and tell. I'm curious to know what's in your pile there.
Um, okay, I have a story about the first vinyl that I put out as an A&R at Universal. It was a few weeks before the pandemic, and Universal is doing business with like Precision, this Canadian company, and we had this debut record from French Canadian artist Ellie Rose, and the artwork is quite stunning. Um,
Oh wow.
like, we shot this in a quarry, like 2 hours south of Montreal, and uh, you know everything was kind of like blue and yellow, and we were thinking like the back cover is white and black and white and very like very beautiful. And initially, we I remember like like you have to fill out a form of like how many copies you want, like what kind of color, blah 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 blah. And I was so excited, so excited. Like, it's my first record. And like, being a vinyl fan, I was like, oh my god, we have to put this on vinyl, blah blah blah. And we had agreed to have the vinyl pressed on white vinyl. Um, and we get the test pressing. It sounds amazing. We agree, blah, blah, blah. And then we get the first copies, and it gets here, and it's green.
Oh no.
And I was like, what do I do? What do I do? And like, of course, the artist is like, what the hell? Like, it's not what we wanted. And I was like, well, no, it's not what we wanted, but what can we do? And so I spoke to some colleagues that on the like production side of things at the label. They were like, let us see like if you didn't mess up when you filled the form, and instead of like you know uh, checking white, you ended up like checking green and whatever. And they were like, okay, well, no, like it's a mistake on their end. So um, some I don't know, like the first 100 copies of that record sent to like indie retailers and online, it was green, and then they recalled the 900 other copies and destroyed them, and they ended up pressing it on a white vinyl, and this record ended up like um, uh, she won Best New Artist at the Disc, which is like the Junos of Quebec, with that record. So it's like very, very, very special to me. And she won the Best New Artist as we were all in confinement. We were all in lockdown. So yeah. So that's like the first story of the first vinyl that I helped produce.
And you
And
have a rare variant now.
yeah.
Is
And
that rare variant on Discogs? Like, could you actually
yeah,
look up?
I don't know about the pricing, but like if people have a green Ellie Rose, like it's quite special. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm sure, like most people won't even know that that was a mistake
No,
um,
no, that's the thing. So like
until today.
yeah, I see reviews on Amazon or like, oh, this beautiful green is amazing. It sounds great, and I was like, no, this was a mistake. Um, and um, one last, and I will. It's still attached to Universal, but um, Sound and Return by Rev. Um, a labor of love for everyone involved. But also when we looked at making the physical product, like we wanted to be really reflective of Saturn Return, the title, and the kind of like aesthetics of like um, you know this beautiful artwork. And at first, I remember Rev and her artistic director, they were like, "Oh, how about we go like crystal white, or crystal clear?" And I was like, "Oh my god, this is the most boring vinyl, blah blah blah. Let's not do that. Collectors will not appreciate." And I was like, "Let's do something very cool and very different, blah blah blah." And everyone ended up like buying it, but I had to put my foot down, being like, "I'm a vinyl collector." And if someone's gonna shell out like $45, you have to make it premium, And I'm so happy how it turned out. But like this, like um, it's one, the music is amazing on it, but it looks amazing as well. And I'm
I
so
was
so
there when pop music first got their copies. You saw
yes,
the
yes,
archived reel that I put out of that record. It was a really kind of special, kind of opening it up and seeing it. It was really beautiful.
yeah. And I know that vinyl collectors really really appreciate when um, people uh, like the labels or the artists like really put together something that's like unique uh, and I feel like we've achieved that. And like for whoever who hasn't had the chance to listen to this album, it's a banger. It's a banger.
how how long does it? What's the process like? Is once the record is being finished, recorded, and like how much time do you need between then and and getting it to the presses, and like I've heard that story from kind of small singer songwriters who kind of did limited runs, but it's
Yeah,
um but I assume that story is very different for a big label who's probably doing a more um a larger
yeah. We
pressing.
are. We're still like, um, like we're still, like for, and I can't speak for. I can only speak from my experience, but I know for a fact that like um, the um, the companies in charge of manufacturing the physical product, um, if they have Taylor Swift in front of you, like it's gonna like Taylor Swift will proceed. You know, we'll take um, the lead, and
Precedence,
you're
yeah.
yes, which is fair. Um, so for example, like for Rev, we sent out the masters at the end of June, early July, and we got the vinyl right on time for the release in October, mid October.
Okay.
Yeah, but like we kind of had to kind of like make sure that you know it's still quite short, but for like a lot of people, like we need a bit more time than that. Like
Yeah.
we need at least like in the like very minimum um, 3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a and did you find that like obviously Taylor Swift would back up the manufacturing. Um, were you finding the same effect when it was coming time to like where everyone was doing all their RSD pressings, and is there a backlog in certain parts of
I
the year?
I am not really involved. I was not really involved in the whole physical product side of things.
I
I
guess
only had
you only worked on your specific artists.
yeah, I only had like bits and pieces of information when especially at the end of the pandemic where like everything was so backlogged. I feel like retailers right now they're kind of like in I don't want to say a golden era, but like what was out of print or like um, like those catalog issues of I don't know like stuff that hasn't been available for years and years and years now. It's being reprinted, and there's kind of like been this like um, uh, it's a good time for to be a retailer. I think um, uh, they can come kind of like work on catalog and have those people who are rediscovering the physical product and wants their favorite Sade album or um, I don't know a greatest hits by so and so.
Well, it we it's definitely the industry's definitely kind of turned around where we got to a point where you know everyone was worried that MP3s and physical media would be dead, and now it's like records that are kind of slowly bringing physical media back into the music industry. Um, so, um, what would you, as a music lover, recommend to someone an album that was released this year so far? So we're in May.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh my god. Oh my
Okay, I'll
god.
give you top three. Top three. We'll give you that because I know
Okay.
you
Top
probably
of
have.
mind, because like I haven't like thoroughly thought of this, but I will go with. Oh my god, it's gonna be tough. Um, for discovery of new artists, like I'm not talking about like artists that have had 2 or 3 albums,
Sure. Okay.
like debut albums. Um, the Fabiano Palladino record is stellar. It's so delicious. It lives it makes me think of if like an art pop artist like Jessie Ware was making conscious, beautiful, sensual 80s R&B, 80s. Yeah, it's so good. She's the daughter of Palladino, the drum player, who is kind of like one of the greatest drum players of all time. So it's like she's a bit of a nepo baby, but like the album is like so delicious. Um, I'm looking at my record. Um, uh, yeah, top of mind is the one. I will also. Oh, yeah, it's the one for now.
Yeah. What was the
Yeah.
last record you bought? No cheating.
Well, I got with my, yeah with my own money. I got with my own money. Uh, I got
60 cents
Fabiana.
to the dollar.
Um,
You're doing like American dollars to Canadian dollars, right? Like
yes, I got Fabiana. I got the Paramore RSD exclusive, like the this uh, with like all those like amazing remixes by Romy and Jack Antonoff. It's amazing. And I got Dua Lipa, the third album, Radical Optimism.
such a beautiful album. I have not gotten my physical copy yet, but it's a fantastic
I have my
record.
qualms, but no, it's so enjoyable.
It's yeah, we'll just leave it at that. Guillaume, uh, thank you for being on the show. Where can people find you online if they want to follow you, etc.?
It's my name at Guillaume Moffet, Guillaume on Instagram, on Facebook. Where else? On TikTok, but I don't post. But whatever, find me.
You do a lot of likes on TikTok. I see them.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
And if you guys like conversations like this that I've had today, please subscribe and like this video or share it with a friend. That would help the channel and the podcast greatly. Um, thank you for watching, and you guys have a great day. Peace out.
Bye.